the impenetrable fortress that was never conquered. No empire could break its walls. Not the Mughals, with their vast armies stretching from horizon to horizon. Not the seafaring Portuguese, with their powerful cannons. Not even the formidable Marathas, or the methodical British. Off the coast of India lies a fortress that for centuries repelled every superpower that dared to attack it. This is the story of India's unconquerable sea fort, and the African rulers who commanded it. In an era defined by emperors and maharajas, one of the greatest military minds in India wasn't a prince born to power, but a former slave from Ethiopia. His name was Malik Ambar. His story and the story of this citadel are completely intertwined. In this video, we uncover the lost history of the Sidis, an African-descended community that rose to power in India, and how their impregnable stronghold, Janjira, defied history itself. To understand how this fortress came to be, we have to journey back to the 16th and 17th century India, a time of chaos and opportunity. The Indian subcontinent was a tapestry of shifting alliances and brutal warfare. In the north, the mighty Mughal Empire was a behemoth, pushing southwards, intent on conquering everything in its path. Standing in their way were the Deccan Sultanates, a collection of 5 powerful but fractured kingdoms in central and southern India. These kingdoms were constantly at war, not just with the Mughals, but with each other. This was a land of breathtaking wealth, but it was also a landscape of political instability, where betrayal was common and power was fleeting. The courts of these sultanates were cosmopolitan melting pots, attracting soldiers, scholars, and merchants from across the world, including Persia, Central Asia, and, as it turns out, Africa. It was into this volatile world that the Sidis arrived. The term Sidi, likely an evolution of the Arabic Sayyid or master, was used for people of East African descent, primarily from Ethiopia and Somalia. They came to India over centuries through different channels. Some were merchants and sailors, navigating the ancient trade routes of the Indian Ocean. Others came as soldiers, their fighting skills highly valued by Indian rulers. And many, like the man who would change the course of Deccan history, arrived in chains, sold into slavery. But these Africans, also known in India as Habshas, were not passive victims of their circumstances. In the fluid, meritocratic military societies of the Deccan, skill and ambition could pave a path to power, regardless of one's origins. The Sidis, renowned for their loyalty and fierce combat skills, quickly carved out a niche for themselves. They became elite bodyguards, trusted commanders, and eventually, kingmakers. They were especially dominant in naval warfare, a skill set often overlooked by land-based Indian empires, but one that would become the key to their survival. They became a distinct community, a formidable power block in the courts of the Deccan. And as the Mughal threat grew, the Sidis would rise to meet the challenge, led by a man whose life story is one of the most remarkable in all of military history. A man who would defy an emperor, pioneer new forms of warfare, and whose legacy would be cast in the stone of an unconquerable fortress. The rise of a military genius, Malik Ambar. The story of Sidi power in the Deccan is inseparable from the towering figure of Malik Ambar. His journey from a shackled slave to the de facto ruler of a kingdom is the stuff of legend. Born in 1548 in Harar, present-day Ethiopia, his birth name was Chapu. Sold into slavery as a boy, he passed through markets in Arabia and Baghdad, where a perceptive owner recognized his intellect and educated him in finance and administration, an education rarely given to a slave, and one that would become one of his greatest assets. Eventually, Ambar was purchased by Chengiz Khan, the prime minister of the Ahmednagar Sultanate in India. Here, in the heart of Deccan power politics, Ambar learned firsthand about court intrigues, shifting loyalties, and the constant struggle for survival against the Mughals. He learned, he observed, and he waited. After his master's death, Malik Ambar was freed and started his career as a mercenary. His reputation for strategic brilliance grew fast, and soldiers, local Maratha warriors, and fellow Sidis flocked to his banner. He built a formidable private army, at its peak numbering over 50,000 men, and sold his services to the highest bidder. What made Malik Ambar so revolutionary was his masterful use of guerrilla warfare, a tactic the locals called Bargi Giri. The Mughals were masters of the traditional set-piece battle, with massive armies clashing on open fields, and they were nearly unbeatable at it. Ambar knew he couldn't win a conventional fight, so he rewrote the rules. His strategy was all about speed, surprise, and attrition. Instead of meeting the huge Mughal armies head-on, Ambar's light cavalry would shadow them, launching lightning-fast raids on their supply lines, poisoning wells, and harassing foraging parties. They would lure larger forces into ambushes in the rugged Deccan terrain, which they knew intimately, and then melt back into the landscape before the Mughals could respond. This War of 1,000 Cuts drove Mughal commanders to distraction. The Emperor, Jahangir, developed a personal hatred for Ambar, calling him the Black-Fated and the Wretched Ambar in his memoirs, a clear testament to his effectiveness. He was a thorn in the side of the world's most powerful empire. By 1600, Malik Ambar was no longer just a mercenary. He was the regent and prime minister of the Ahmednagar Sultanate, the power behind the throne. For 2 decades, he was the chief architect of resistance against Mughal expansion, reforming the state's administration and tax systems while holding off an empire. While Ambar was mastering war on land, his Sidi brethren were consolidating their power at sea. Their base of operations was a rocky island off the Konkan coast that would become the ultimate symbol of their defiance, Janjira. The name is a local version of the Arabic word Jazira, which simply means island. This was their maritime bastion. The fort's origins trace back to a wooden structure built by local Koli fishermen in the 15th century to defend against pirates. Recognizing its strategic value, a general of the Ahmednagar Sultanate captured it. The transformation from a wooden outpost to an imposing stone fortress was a project undertaken by the Sidis under the patronage of the same kingdom Malik Ambar served as regent. So, while Malik Ambar wasn't the literal architect, he was the architect of the city power that made Janjira possible. He was the land-based shield that created the political space for his compatriots to establish their naval supremacy. The rise of Janjira was a direct result of the era of resistance he defined, a stone and mortar embodiment of the same unconquerable spirit that fueled his armies. Murud Janjira is more than a fort. It's a masterpiece of military engineering, designed to be one with its greatest defense, the Arabian Sea. Built on an oval-shaped rock about 3 kilometers offshore, its isolation was its first and most formidable line of defense. Any attacker had to mount a difficult amphibious assault, completely exposed to the fort's cannons long before they could even reach the walls. And what walls they are! Rising to 40 feet, they were built from massive blocks of black granite, bonded with a mixture of lime, sand, and jaggery. This formidable curtain wall is punctuated by 26 rounded bastions, each providing an overlapping field of fire. From these bastions, hundreds of cannons once pointed out to sea. The fort was a self-contained killing field, with no blind spots and no safe approach for an enemy. Perhaps the most ingenious feature of Janjira's defense is its main gate. It's so perfectly concealed that it's impossible to spot from the sea until you're just a few meters away. An enemy fleet would circle the fort in confusion, all while being battered by cannon fire. For those who did manage to find it, the gate was a death trap. The angled entrance forces attackers into a narrow passage where defenders from above could rain down arrows, boiling oil, and musket fire. A smaller postern gate, the Darya Darwaza, or Sea Gate, served as a secret route for escape or supplies during a long siege. But a fortress is only as strong as its ability to sustain its defenders. Janjira was designed as a self-sufficient island city. It had barracks, quarters for officers, a grand palace for the Sidi Nawab, or ruler, and mosques. Most astonishingly, the fort contained 2 massive freshwater ponds, 60 feet deep. Think about that. 2 large sources of fresh, drinkable water on a tiny rock island in the middle of the salty Arabian Sea. This was a remarkable strategic advantage. While a besieging army's water supply might dwindle, the defenders of Janjira could hold out for years. The symbolism of the fort was not lost on its creators. Flanking the main gate is a powerful sculpture carved into the stone. It depicts a ferocious tiger-like beast, the symbol of the Sidis, clutching 6 elephants in its claws, representing the land-based powers of India. The message was clear. Janjira was the master of all who dared to challenge it. This combination of natural defenses, brilliant design, overwhelming firepower, and self-sufficiency made Murud Janjira virtually invincible. It stood as the capital of the independent Sidi state of Janjira, a small but powerful kingdom ruled by men of African descent in the heart of the Indian Ocean trade routes. The claim that Murud Janjira was unconquerable isn't just a legend, it's a historical fact, proven as the greatest powers of the age failed to take it. The first major challengers were the Marathas, a rising Hindu power led by the legendary warrior king Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. Shivaji was a military genius who carved out a vast empire, but he saw the Sidis and their coastal stronghold as a disease in the stomach, a persistent threat to his kingdom's coast. Starting in the 1660s, Shivaji launched numerous assaults on Janjira, even building a navy to challenge the Sidis on their own terms. His forces tried to scale the walls, blockade the island, and bombard it into submission. Every single attempt failed. The Sidi navy outmaneuvered the Maratha fleet, while the fort's cannons kept Shivaji's forces at bay. Legend says he tried to conquer Janjira no less than 13 times, but the Sidi flag never fell. After Shivaji's death, his son, Sambhaji Maharaj, took up the challenge with an obsessive zeal. In 1682, he launched the most ambitious siege in Janjira's history, assembling a massive army and personally overseeing the assault. The Maratha artillery pounded the fort, inflicting significant damage. For the first time, Janjira seemed vulnerable. Impatient, Sambhaji embarked on an audacious plan to build a causeway of stone across the 3 kilometers of open sea, a bridge right to the fort's walls. But just as it seemed he might succeed, the Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb launched a massive invasion of the Maratha heartland. Sambhaji was forced to abandon the siege to save his own capital, leaving the causeway unfinished and the fortress once again inviolate. The Marathas weren't the only ones to be humbled. The Portuguese, with their powerful navy, attacked several times but were no match for the fort's defenses. The Sidis even allied with the Ottoman Empire to repel a Portuguese fleet in the late 16th century, showing their reach in global politics. The mighty Mughal Empire also found its authority checked by Janjira. While the Sidis technically served as Mughal admirals on the west coast, it was a relationship of convenience. When a Sidi commander defied his overlord, Malik Ambar himself, Ambar was unable to replace him, proving that even the most powerful figures on the mainland couldn't dictate terms to Janjira's rulers. The Mughals had to rely on the Sidis at sea, giving the island kingdom a significant degree of autonomy. Even the British, the last great imperial power in India, were unable to conquer the fort. by the time they rose to prominence, they saw more value in an alliance than a costly and likely futile war. Janjira became a princely state under British suzerainty, but was never taken by force. For over 300 years, Murud Janjira's defenses were never breached in battle. This incredible record is a testament not just to the fort's design, but to the courage and skill of the Sidi warriors who defended it, generation after generation. The story of Murud Janjira didn't end with the last would-be conqueror. The Sidi Nawabs continued to rule their small but proud state, their red flag flying over the fortress. Their rule, a dynasty of African origin governing a princely state in India for centuries, was a remarkable anomaly in history. The end of Sidi rule over Janjira came not with a bang, but with a pen. In 1947, India gained its independence, and the subcontinent's hundreds of princely states had to choose their future. On April 3, 1948, the state of Janjira peacefully merged with the Indian Union, bringing centuries of Sidi rule to a close. The unconquered fort had finally yielded, not to an army, but to the tide of history. Today, Murud Janjira stands as a silent, magnificent ruin. The Nawab's palace is crumbling, but its strong granite walls remain. The great cannons still stand on the bastions, rusting in the salt-laced wind, permanent sentinels staring out at a sea that no longer carries enemy fleets. The fort is managed by the Archaeological Survey of India, a popular tourist destination. Visitors can walk the same walls that Shivaji tried and failed to scale, and marvel at the freshwater lakes that sustained a community against all odds. The legacy of Malik Ambar also endures. He is remembered as one of the great military innovators of Indian history. He remains a symbol of defiance and a testament to the idea that a person's origins don't determine their destiny. But perhaps the most important legacy is the living one. The Sidi community in India, though small, continues to thrive. Found primarily in Gujarat, Karnataka, and Maharashtra, they are living links to this extraordinary history. Their story, embodied by the fortress of Janjira and the genius of Malik Ambar, is a powerful counter-narrative to the standard histories of empires and kings. The story of Murud Janjira is a reminder that history is filled with incredible tales hidden in plain sight. It challenges our perceptions of who held power and how it was wielded. A community of African descent, led by a former slave turned military genius, became masters of the sea and built a fortress that was the envy of emperors. If you were fascinated by this story of hidden history and military genius, be sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the forgotten corners of the past. Let us know in the comments what other unconquerable fortresses or hidden histories you'd like us to explore next. Thanks for watching.